Well, I'm Shannon. I'm a fourth year at UVA. Um, for those of you who don't know, um, today I am just going to be giving a little talk about growth. Um, so for those of you who don't know, I grew up dancing, and dancing was low key my life. Like 5 to 6 days out of the week, growing up, I would be dancing and in a dance studio. Like school was not necessarily my priority. Like I'd go to school and then like right after school was like straight to dance, and then I'd be at dance for another like 4 or 5 hours, and that was just like my life. Um, and obviously with dancing, like flexibility is kind of like important. Like it's kind of something you want to have. Um, and so I'm like naturally like decently like flexible, but not like the most flexible person in the world. You're gonna see where I'm going with this, I promise. Um, and so like I had to like work really hard to like get my flexibility and to get like my right leg split. And so and my left leg split too. But I found that I was more flexible on my right than my left. And so I would put all my attention into like stretching extra hard on the right because I was like, ooh, like I'm good at this, and this is like where like I can see like potential. As with my left side, I was like, this is like kind of not that great, and I'm just gonna like pretend like it doesn't exist. And so come to like year six. Also, for those of you who don't know, I grew up in England, and it was like our year six leavers assembly, which is imagine like fifth grade elementary school graduation type of thing. And we go and we perform like skits and all this stuff like for the whole school. It's kind of a big deal. I don't want to like brag or anything, but I was acting as a 4-year-old, so it was like pretty cool stuff. And I was like being really obnoxious, and I had like these two like pigtails in my hair, and I was like skipping around. This was like the dress rehearsal, even like wasn't even the real thing. And I'm like skipping around and just like kind of being like annoying, and then I fell and I like bruised my right butt cheek and like my right leg. And I was like, oh man, this isn't fair. Like I can't sit down. Like everyone needs to sit down. But when you're a dancer, it's like especially annoying because everything you do is like with your legs. And so then I would go to dance and I'd be like, oh, I can't stretch my right leg anymore. And so then I would just like do twice as much work on my left, not like really expecting anything to happen, but just because I couldn't do anything. And it was like kind of annoying. I was like, this stinks because I'm not even good at it. And so then I just had to keep like stretching like on my left. Well, then like after a while, I eventually like became like, well, I was healed and I was all better, and I was able to like sit down normally again, and life was great. And I was like worried that I was gonna lose all my progress with my right leg split because I hadn't done it in like months. I think maybe that's an exaggeration. It might have been like a lot of weeks, but either way, an extended period of time had gone by. I hadn't done the splits in a long time or stretched my right leg. I was like, oh, all this progress I made is gonna be erased, and I'm not gonna be able to like. I'm just not gonna be where I was before. And lo and behold, I like tried to do the splits, and it was like better than I thought. Like granted, it wasn't like perfection, but I was like, hey, like all my growth isn't completely erased. And then I tried doing the splits on my left, just because that's like what you do. And then I like did the splits, and I was like actually able to do it. I was like, oh my gosh, like I got my left leg split, and I was like really thankful that I like bruised my butt because I was able to like get my left leg split. And so like all my progress hadn't been erased, but I was able to like put my attention like on something else. Um, and that kind of relates to how I've been feeling recently, not with my splits, but just with my faith and with prayer in general. Um, so like obviously we're not at school right now, and we're living like a life in quarantine at home a lot of the time, or most of the time, or all the time. Anyway, we're at home all the time. And for me, like before spring break, I was like, oh, life is so great. And I was just really comfortable with my way of life. And I was really comfortable with how my prayer life had kind of like evolved and how I was living that out. And I like was heavily relying on the Adoration Chapel. Like obviously we're so fortunate and so blessed to have access to the Adoration Chapel all the time. And I was like just really taking advantage of that and really like thriving off of that. And then once I wasn't able to go to the Adoration Chapel, I started to realize like where like just more of my own personal weaknesses, like where they were, or like how, yeah, just how much like of prayer like had just become comfortable and very routine. Um, and so like being at home, I started to like get really kind of frustrated and just kind of like I'm like a fraud and I'm a fake Catholic, because when I'm at school and everybody's around, I can like pray and like go to daily mass and do all the right things. And now I'm at home, it's like I'm a failure and I'm fake and I'm not worthy. And yeah, well, these are all lies, you guys. And I don't know if anyone else has been feeling this way, but they're lies and they're not true. And I'm here to tell you that, because I have a feeling I'm probably not the only one that's feeling this way. Just because we're so lucky to have such a strong community on grounds who like build each other up, and you're surrounded with people who are striving for virtue. And it's really hard when you don't have that anymore, and or in the same way. And that can be really challenging. And so I was going to confession a couple weeks ago, and I was driving, and I was like, I don't want to go to confession. And I was just like feeling really defeated, and I was just feeling like I am like such a fake Catholic, because I have been, yeah, I just like feel like I've not been living the same way as I was at school. Like coming back home, I feel like I'm high school Shannon again, which like high school Shannon wasn't terrible. Like she was a fun girl, but like it's just starting to feel like, oh, I'm just getting back into old like mindsets and old habits and losing my prayer, and just kind of like I was just feeling very defeated. And then like during confession, I had this like realization that like no, like growth isn't necessarily linear, and how it doesn't necessarily like prayer isn't gonna look the same here as it did when I was at school, and that's an okay thing. And it's okay to accept that. And I'm not fake because I'm not going to daily mass, because nobody's going to daily mass. um, and so it helped me to kind of like, after that, I kind of started to reflect on like what has been going well, and like areas I have been able to continue to grow, even if it's growing in a different direction. And like during this time, ironically, I've been able to pray more with people. Like, hear me out. Like, all of a sudden, I have time to like call people and spend time with them. Like, I have like once a week, I call a couple people and we do a rosary together. And then like I have another couple of friends, and we call and we do night prayer like a couple times a week. And like I've been praying more with other people, and that's like a really beautiful thing. And that's not a failure in any way. Like that is like a cool way to continue to grow. Also, like I've been able to like spend more time with scripture. Like who knew I had to be like kicked out of the adoration chapel to like actually like open up my Bible and start like praying with scripture more. But that has actually also been another benefit, and just like another fruit, another like way like to grow that I hadn't expected. You know, I was like, oh, I want to go to the chapel, and now it's like, it's okay, I have other things. Like I'm not like completely shut off from God or living my faith. And so I want to challenge you guys to just start by reflecting on what's been going well this quarantine, because I think it's so easy to feel defeated and to feel like, oh, I failed this way, this way, this way, or I didn't like pray enough today, or oh, I didn't call someone, or oh, like I didn't text them back, or oh, just like it's so easy to just get really hard on yourself. And I want to encourage you to just kind of reflect on, yeah, just the ways you've been thriving, the ways you've been growing that you might not recognize just kind of like at face value. And like reflect like, how am I like continuing to pursue the Lord even if it looks different? And if you feel like you aren't, then like I encourage you to figure out like, or just to think of like one way you can do that while you're at home. Like you can call a friend and ask a friend to pray with you. Like it doesn't have to be a rosary. You could just ask to like intercede for one another. Like I know so many people who would want to do that. We also have our daily rosaries on Zoom every day. Like if you want that community and accountability. Also, like during this time, we could be fasting. Like it might feel like we have nothing, but really like we have so much. And through fasting, it can unite us to Jesus on the cross through our suffering and through his. And so, yeah, I just encourage you to really just reflect on what's been going well first and foremost before you start to bash yourself. But yeah, that's all I've got.